6:30, so we'll call the meeting to order, and let's please start with the Pledge of Allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And do we have any additions to the agenda today, or any changes? Hearing none, I'll look for a motion to approve the agenda.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Now we'll open up for public comments. If there's anyone who would like to discuss anything that is not on the agenda, now would be the time. Seeing no one, we will close public comments and look at the consent agenda. Is there anything on the consent agenda that needs to be removed or further discussed? Removed for discussion. Hearing none, I'll look for a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented.
I'll make that motion.
Do we have a second? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. And that will take us right into 5.1, approval of profile job description and advertising for city administrator. Gary, please.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. Great to be back here with you tonight. Several items to discuss regarding the position, just to sort of summarize the items to go through here this evening. First is the draft position profile. Second is to discuss the salary range for the position. Third is the job description. Fourth, sorry. Thank you.
All right, green light, now I know, all right. So, timeline, primary issue on a timeline is really to talk with you about possible interview dates for the final interview for the position. So I think what I'll do is just start with a profile document and work through it from there. So you've had a chance to review it. I'm open to any and all suggestions for improvements, concerns that folks have. Right now, there'll be a few things fixed later. For example, there's a salary range listed here. Well, whatever you ultimately determine as the salary range is what's going to go in there, but that's what the current range is. Things like that will be changed later. So, any thoughts, issues, concerns?
Open it up to the document itself, so people think on it and thoughts. First, I think it's a great document. I mean, I think it was well prepared. Absolutely. Personally, I think, I don't know if there's a lot I would change on it.
Okay.
I think it looks good.
The only thing I saw was on the organizational chart, there's, Public Works. Should you put employees, because this is employees, so I don't know if that.
Oh, sure, because you just added,
Yeah, because there's another,
yes, why not?
there'll be 2 Public Works employees.
Get that right, yep. Okay.
That was the only thing that I noticed, otherwise
All
I
right.
really liked it.
Good.
I think you took a lot of the input that we had given you, and
Mm-hmm.
absolutely.
Yeah, it was the goal of those meetings to try and, gather that,
Yep.
gather your thoughts there, so,
Okay.
all right.
Anything else on that? I think that
Wow.
looks good, I think that's great.
Okay. I guess technically you don't need to take action on approving that
Right,
document,
right.
so, but I will, so the salary range we'll talk about now, and then, like I said, that's gonna get, whatever you settle on is gonna get reflected here. I put together some sample, salary ranges, and this is by no means scientific. I pulled this off the League of Minnesota Cities website. I didn't do any analysis of comparability for these organizations, but I just put it out there for you to look at. I know that while the published salary range is what is listed here, I think that your current person is well above the published salary range, so you have already deviated from the range, and my guess is that range was established long ago and has long since kind of been forgotten until somebody like me comes along and says, well, what's the range? So I do think it's worth talking about where you wanna land with that, with the range you wanna establish for this position. I would add just one thing, I know there's been some talk in the city about doing a compensation classification study at some point in the future. This would be comprehensively looked at that time as well, so it could change up or down, whatever, at that time as well. So what you're taking action on is not etched in stone.
So the range you have on for this, where did that come from? Is that where you're thinking based on?
That's your established salary range for the position.
That came from us?
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
I guess I look, is that still a range? I mean, we don't need to extend the range to where we are today, do we?
You don't need to, no. You can do whatever you want, it just, so let me give you a little feedback on that. I think that people will wonder, if you in reality, the range you have in place now is not what I have listed here. So, my suggestion to you is to use the range you're already using in practice, which I think it tops out at like 85 something.
Well, that makes sense to me, so putting the max,
Yeah,
putting that out to some makes some sense, right?
Yeah.
Opening that, not necessarily that we have to do that.
correct.
Just try, kind of find, can you recommend 3 comparable cities? But looking at the list, I kind of find it hard to pick 3 that are really comparable to what we are, right? I mean, I know we're kind of listed as metro, and a lot of Carver County is metro, but you start getting way out this way, it's a lot more rural and,
Yeah, the one couple of things that I think separates you from communities of comparable population sizes, you're in a growth area, so that brings with it activity level for this position and some complexity. So there's that going for it. Beyond that, it's really, really tough to extract comparisons without doing detailed analysis on socioeconomic factors and other, poverty rates and things like that come into play typically with that kind of analysis. So I would kind of push that back more to you and say, well, do you normally compare yourselves to any of the cities listed here? And if you do, maybe that would be a good guide for you to look at and think about.
I think we should put the max up to certainly where we're at today.
yeah.
Yeah. So, in your professional opinion, if we had starting at this and then to where we're at today, so it's gonna widen the gap,
Right.
would you feel we would get a good applicant pool for that range? 'Cause, I don't know,
Right.
that's what my thing is would we get a decent, when we're working for a public works employee, we knew that if we had to start at a certain level, to at least get a decent pool of applicants.
Right.
But also not, make sure we're high enough that we're getting some ones that may have more experience that are going to have the expectation that they're probably gonna start on the higher end of the scale. But also still get the ones that are that's what I don't know, 'cause I don't know this industry.
If you were gonna use that 85 number, for example, my suggestion to you would be to bump up the bottom. I don't think there's a strong likelihood of finding candidates that are gonna start at that bottom number.
Okay.
So if your plan is to move up the top, I would suggest moving up the bottom accordingly.
Okay. All right. I would agree with that. I think we'd slide out.
Yeah.
We could slide the whole, go 5,000, go from 70 to 85. Seems reasonable. Any thoughts on that?
that's an item, if you want to do that, I would suggest you take action on.
Do you want, would you suggest we take them on every item we're doing, or just catch them all
Oh,
at once?
you could, I guess that's up to you if you wanna roll them together, I mean, any thoughts? Or do you want them separately? The other item is the job description, I mean, that's really the only other major item, those two fit together well.
We'll roll them
Okay.
together.
Okay.
So it was, we were doing 70.
70 to 85?
So the job description then is the next item in your packet. I have went through the job description, updated it. I mean, there's about 50 different ways to write an administrator job description, and in my opinion, it doesn't make a ton of difference. So what I tried to do here was update this document. There were some references that needed to come out, in my opinion, but I thought the lion's share of the duties were still appropriate and applicable to the position. I added a line about the city clerk. You know, for now, this position is the clerk and administrator. There was some discussion, I think I had with actually a couple of you, about the requirements. The requirement, and it wasn't occurring to me at the time, but I think a couple of you asked, well, is that city clerk position have to have this 3-year clerk program certification, and it's not necessary. It's something that you can get later on. So you can structure however you want to structure. If in the future you want to separate clerk from administrator and have a clerk go through that certification process, you can do that. I mean, that's a plus for the position. Certainly makes sense to do, but it isn't a requirement that the clerk have that in order to be considered a clerk.
And I'm good with the changes to the job description. When I reviewed it, thank you, I just got lost on it. I was going under the assumption we're gonna have all this looked at here, hopefully in the near future, and get them all reset anyway, so I think this is,
Right.
I think this is great to send out for now. Hoping we take a look at them all in the near future and get them all calibrated right.
So one thing you should probably, I did make some fairly substantive changes to that minimum qualifications area. And my attitude about minimum qualifications is don't close the door at the hiring process. Later on is when you can evaluate who's the best fit. But if sometimes the tendency is to draw up minimum qualifications that really cause people to not even consider applying. And I'd rather have the door wide open at the hiring process. That doesn't mean you're gonna pick somebody that, you know, is on the low end of qualifications, but at least your options are out there. So that was my motivation in making the suggested change to that particular area.
I would agree with that, I think that's the right approach. Any comments on the job descriptions, everyone?
The only comment I have is on the hours, just write occasional evenings for meetings
What section is that?
on the first page, where it says hours worked.
Oh, add the word occasional. Yeah, that's a good point. It kind of would imply every
Implies
night
every day,
otherwise.
exactly.
So, okay.
Oh, yeah.
So, so I'll just insert the word occasional into that spot. Okay. That's a good point.
Any other items with that? Okay, what's the next item we're doing?
So the next one is really to talk about a date for interviews, so, which,
We'll wrap up then
okay.
the motion on that and then talk about the date. So I'll look for a motion to, post the, job description with the changes that Gary has recommended and the salary from $70,000 to $85,000 for the, range.
We'll make that motion.
Do we have a second?
Second that.
Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. All right, date.
Okay, yeah, so the date or dates are really incumbent on what sort of interview process you wanna go through. And I try to have interview dates in the profile just so candidates lock in, hey, this is what they're looking at. Now, sometimes the city council will want to change the dates at a later point because of, for whatever reason, that's fine. But I do like to establish a date or dates initially. Now, I realize that this council, you know, if we're talking about a 2-day interview process, that's gonna get pretty challenging, especially if it's 2 days during the week. And on a weekend might be equally challenging. So, I mean, one thing we could do that would limit council activities is if you have other interview components that you wanna do, those could be done like the afternoon of the first day of interviews, but the council wouldn't be involved in that. That might be department staff interviews, it might be, maybe you want a community panel, whatever. We'll talk about details of that later, but that could be done on day one without any council involvement. That way, then your commitment, it becomes just the second day of interviews. That's how I typically structure a 2-day interview process. If you wanna do it all in one day, then I'd plan on the better part of the full day of interview-related activities for the council. So, either way, it really amounts generally to about a day's commitment for the council.
If we did the 2-day split and we did like half, could it be recorded so that the council members could watch it that evening, just to see, or?
I haven't done that. Usually what I do is I meet with those panels right afterwards and get all of their feedback, and then I write that up and get it to the council.
Okay.
Usually that's a little more efficient way to get you the information, but yeah, whatever happens with those, if you do some preliminary panel work, you're gonna get feedback, and we'll talk about how much feedback you want. I mean, it could be significant feedback, or it could be a one-page summary of feedback, whatever you want, but you would get that in advance of your doing interviews on the second day. You get it that night.
Okay, I was just curious, 'cause
Yeah.
if that's the way we ended up doing it, and I couldn't make it to those, it would be, I'd
Right.
like to see the results or know
Right.
the discussion points so that I help make the decision.
And typically, I recommend council members not participate in those other interviews, just because sometimes that gets, you know, kind of throws off the dynamic, so,
I don't,
yeah.
I look for your.
Yeah. Yep, and I'll be here for all of that and walking you through it.
Capture it and
Right.
summarize it
Right,
all,
right.
so that's certainly,
Yeah.
we'll have to decide if that's how we're gonna, cause the
Yeah.
department heads want public to come in, how
All,
we want it.
exactly.
But those will be
exactly.
decided later.
Those can be decided later. The main thing is really to say, you know, are we prepared to say we are gonna commit to this date for council activities? And that could be a Saturday, I mean, that's common as well. I kind of prefer not to do Saturdays, just because I like people in non-Saturday mode, but, you know, usually interviews are intense enough that people, you know, lose that anyway, so it's not a big problem, but I just bring that up as a...
And what were you typically, I think it said 3 or 4 candidates, is that?
You know, the candidate pool will drive that number. I never recommend going below 3. Usually no more than 5, but the other thing is sometimes what I'll recommend is maybe you've got 3 you feel real strong about, and then we'd have a backup or 2 in case one of the primary people then just took that slot if one of the primary people accepted a job elsewhere or whatever. Because there does tend to be a little bit of churn with this, and I see regularly where finalists end up withdrawing because they've accepted a position somewhere else. So, very common.
Okay. So are we looking around, basically around the June 26th?
Well, June 26th is your council meeting, where I will come right here, you'll select finalists at that meeting.
Okay.
So we're looking at like mid to, you know, sometime after mid-July for the actual interviews.
Okay.
So the dates I just threw out were July 19th and 20th. I mean, there's no magic to those dates. There's all sorts of other options.
There, I'm sorry,
Yeah.
Okay.
So you kinda want us to kinda pick a date?
If you could, that would be wonderful. Realizing it can change, I get that.
July 19th works for me, I can make either work.
I could make either work that week, the following week I'm gone, like out of the state.
Okay. 19th, other thoughts on the 19th? So if we did some pre-stuff, that would be the day before that, so the 18th potentially for some. Okay? I mean, that would involve you, I mean, like I said, it would just be, if you're gonna do other things, we could do it the day before.
That'd be the others, yeah. Yeah, I think that would work.
July 19th? See how easy this is?
Yeah.
So, perfect.
So when we
So we'll go with that date, I'll put that date in the profile document, again, it's just so people kinda lock it in. If we need to change it later because of your, any issues that you all have, we'll change it, so.
Perfect. Okay.
Eventually, you'll need to set that as a special meeting, but you'll be able to do that, when we have a schedule firmed up for that day.
And as we track the timeline here.
Right.
Make sure we're on
Correct,
track.
correct.
Okay, good. Perfect. Any other items on there, or did we capture everything?
I think you've captured everything, I just wanna summarize real quickly what'll happen between now and June 26th, because that's a long ways off and people are like, wow, that's a long time. So the position will be posted starting tomorrow. You didn't make substantive changes, it'll take a long time, we'll get that ready to go. Position will be posted tomorrow through June 6th. I will do an initial ranking immediately following the closure of the position. Though the people that I always refer to this as like a top 10, but the number varies depending on the group. Could be 10, could be 12, could be 9, whatever. Those top 10 will be assigned a video interview and a personality index. You will have access to the video interview, in advance of your having to make a selection of finalists, and you'll have access to that personality inventory as well. So you'll have application materials from each candidate, a video interview, short video interview, it's about a 15-minute interview, but I'm finding that councils and county boards are really reacting favorably to being able to, see people and hear their answers to questions rather than just looking at paper going, these are the ones we want to interview. So, you'll have all of that about a week before when you make the selection on June 26th.
You said that's fairly new, correct?
It is, it's very new, we just got some new software that we're using for that purpose, and the reaction to it has been real positive, but it is very new.
Great.
Yeah.
And then we'll review those and then decide on finalists on the 26th.
Yep. And I'll,
Perfect.
have all the information, again, about a week before that meeting, as well as the instructions for that. That's a very awkward meeting because the Minnesota law requires that the, discussion about people, when you talk about it, has to be in a public meeting, but you can't identify the candidates. So I'll give you a numbering system, so you'll say candidate number 1, number 4, so it's a very strange process, but that's what the law is, and then as soon as you name finalists for interview with you, then their names become public, but the ones who don't interview never become public, so. But I'll be explaining all that in advance as well, but it's sort of a strange process that occurs.
Perfect. All right, great. Anything else? Any other questions for Gary? Perfect, well, thank you.
Okay, yeah,
Appreciate
thank
it.
you.
Thanks for
I'm
coming in.
looking forward to it, and I'll send an email out when it's advertised, but it'll happen tomorrow.
Okay, perfect.
So, okay,
Thank you.
thank you.
All right, then we'll go to 6.2. No, 6.1.
Our signature, 6.1, so we have discussion of the water company community ad update and revised lease agreement.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you for letting me come. For those who I haven't had a chance to meet, I'm Rach Bender. I'm the Watertown Area Community Education Director. I help oversee all programming within community education that some of you have been fortunate to meet Amy Jimler, our Kids Company Coordinator, or some of our wonderful Kids Company staff who have been in the building this past year with our Kids Company program. I'd like to thank the city again for being a terrific supporter of all programming that community education does, anything from our one-time classes periodically held here for our adults all the way down to our youngest youth participants that I heard our creature encounters that we had over or close to 300 people attend, which is awesome. And then especially this past year that with the addition of our Kids Company child care program, which offers wraparound care for youth ages 3 to about 6th grade. And then just want to give you an update what our current numbers are with that program. That enrolled, we have about 21 youth, and which is great because our maximum to hold to our accreditation standards is about 25 youth. And so it depends on how many attend on a daily basis. It fluctuates throughout the week in the time period. And then for our summer program, so far we have 17 youth that are signed up, and they'll be in the building starting around June 6th or 7th. I apologize, I don't have the exact date. I know I provided that to Luann, but I can't remember it right offhand. The 7th? Okay, thank you.
It's my anniversary.
And we'll be in the building from then until towards the end of August, from about 6:15 in the morning to 6 o'clock at night, with periodic field trips in there. And we know we'll be planning around when there's resurfacing, or if there's an event that we were notified of in advance, that we will plan to transport kids to the Watertown location if needed. And then looking ahead to next year, or next school year, is that we have 10 youth enrolled so far, but we know it's not even the early bird registration deadline yet, so we know we'll be picking up some more youth prior to that. So as you can see, that we are planning on renewing our lease with the city, and we're hoping to keep the same parameters. I think there was just a couple of changes that we proposed to Luann the other day, and it was just adding a line saying, just giving us a week's notice in case we have to put stuff away so we can plan staff accordingly, just for some of those night events that we know that are coming up. And so something as simple as that. Do you guys have any questions for myself in regards to community education or programming that we offer?
No, you said originally it wasn't planned to do the summer?
With that?
It wasn't originally planned?
It was planned for the summer, but it was written in a tentative, just in case, based on enrollment, that we wanted an out in the contract just in case that we didn't have enough youth enrolled to justify the cost of the lease. So I think there was an error with this current lease that we missed putting the time parameters for the summer up in that line 6, where it lists the before and after school times, but we missed listing the summer times in there. But it talks later on in the lease about June, July, and August. So just adding that clarification in the new lease also.
I did talk to Amy, and she said that there was a gentleman, I think his kids come to this after-school program, that actually took their flyers and put it in post boxes around one of the neighborhoods, and I think they got about 5 kids from that. So there is definitely a need here, and with all the struggles the school district has with keeping mayor students, interested in the mayor. That's kind of why this was brought last year.
There's definitely been an outreach from mayor residents to the school district to provide opportunities like this in the city limits of mayor. So yeah, I appreciate the city council last year that it was very expedited. I think we came to the council in May, and by July we had the lease signed. So and it has worked out immensely. We have terrific staff that provide awesome care to the children, and the city staff who have been great to work with in regards to opening the space and being very accommodating. So we appreciate the city, and we've been able to work around events that, as in the contract, that give us 2 months notice, and we'll close down for the date. And we've been able to accommodate night events where we've had to just put stuff away. Just let us know by those times, so that way we can give proper notification to families, so they can set up a plan B and let us know, so we can plan staffing accordingly. Because if we have to put something away, it takes a little longer.
Has there been issues, Luann or Janelle, have we seen issues with being able to meet that 2-month notice.
It didn't get noticed here, in the last month or so, there was something that got scheduled.
Okay.
And it shouldn't have gotten scheduled, but I think that we are aware of that now. CMED staff's been absolutely excellent to work with when we told them, give them a couple weeks' notice. They've taken care of it when it's been on our end, so.
Okay, okay.
But I think we need to be more diligent on when we are scheduling out, and I think that's something I talked to Rick about already, too, that maybe that becomes a work session discussion with you on how do you rank who wants the community center when community ed is there.
Right,
So that,
yeah, I think
so
we're
that
gonna
you
have
can give
to.
some direction to staff.
Right, okay, that's good.
Now, we've
So,
been able to work around, and that 2-month, it just, like I said, allows for that plan, plan B for families, because, it's childcare, and it's tough if they have to plan accordingly, or, either relatives or work in the time frame with the Watertown location. What was I just totally blanked on what I was gonna say, so I apologize about that.
when I first read it, I thought this was something totally new you were adding and wanted to do the summer program, but it appears the intent was always there.
Yep.
Last year, that's already been worked into the that was already been part of the whole thing. May not have been captured great up front, but I do see it down in the other areas that the intent was there.
Yep,
But the out was you could suspend it had you not had enough enrollment.
exactly, because
Okay.
you never know with sign up, are you gonna get 2
That
kids?
threw me off a little bit when I was first reading this.
Oh, okay.
The concern of now all day, and Janelle Luanigan, you see concerns from an all day aspect of here. From citywide, any concerns?
Not really concerned with the noise, maybe.
Okay.
You
Well,
know, all day is different than just after school noise, but, so I don't know what that level will be.
I heard that there was gonna be windows that were gonna be added to that, so I think that will kinda deafen noise, and I think if they do plan on being in the gym, on those I'm assuming, I don't know what Christine is planning, but I'm assuming there's gonna be a lot of outside time when the weather is applicable, that they have a lot of hands-on activities, based around science, and where that'll be more sit down. And when they are in the gym, I'm sure they'll pull the doors so to deafen the sound as much as possible. And
They do now, they close the doors to the gym and you can't hear. It's when they're coming through the hallway, but they're good.
And so the louder times will probably be during those drop-off times of 7 and 8 o'clock, or pickup times around that 5 o'clock. But you guys close at, yeah, yep. So,
Use the back door, can't they, to go outside?
We're closed at that time, we're closed.
oh, yeah, to go outside to the playground, yeah, they could go out that back
Yeah.
corner where
So
you
they
only,
don't, like if they're gonna go outside, they don't need to traipse through here, they can use that back door.
But a lot of times you go to the bathroom before they go out.
Oh, sure.
Yeah. They can take them and
or for snack or other things to wash hands and.
Sure, yeah.
But I think, I know Christina, who's our site supervisor, that I think she's been great that if there has been something that, just go to her. And then also, if you, to also go to Amy Dimler, who is our kids company coordinator, that I know that she's been very easy to work with, and, just let us know. Anything else?
Any other questions for Rachel on this?
Kyle, what's in that, locker room? Do they function?
Locker room?
Those old locker rooms, there was 2 shower rooms, are they full of stuff and storage?
Yeah, that's like the janitor's closet, that's where like the floor scrubber is, and
Is there only
toilet
one,
paper and full of salt.
so there's only one locker room left?
Yeah.
Okay. I just thought they could store stuff in there. When we have events, they can just throw all their stuff in there so that, they don't have to haul it all the way.
Well, I know that, when we looked at moving in this year, that I think we pretty much have taken every nook and cranny that that has been possible, which is, I think I should put it this way, whatever is here, set up for kids company, I don't believe that we were planning on adding anything, more than what's already here. That it's been very accommodating for the youth, you know. Things for the summer might be brought in and out, but it would be more on a temporary basis based
I was
on
just looking for a
programming.
better place for you to store your stuff, or an easy place for you to put stuff away when we have like weddings or whatever.
I think Christina has it down pretty good of where, it's not too much, she pushes some things in that room over there, rolls the carpet up.
Yeah.
It's just given us a heads up or enough notice so that way we can, and I know that there's been a couple of things here or there where, and I say my community ed instructors are just as guilty, the ones who've been here forever, where they forget that Kids Company's here till 6 and they want to come a little earlier to set up for stuff, and it's tough to set up when you still got the kids running around until sometimes parents go, if it's pickups at 6, they're right at 6 o'clock to grab kids. So it's been even an education for some of my community ed instructors come in here to teach classes, like, okay, gotta change my habit that I've had for years of coming in a little earlier or modifying class times on a whim. So, but you know, it's all a learning curve. I mean, we're literally not even a full year into this adventure together, so.
I'm assuming in the summer, we're gonna see a little more of that with the weddings and the reservations already for the room.
So if there's anything on the summer agenda or calendars already, shoot me or Amy an email and we will, you know, plan accordingly. So I think that's as soon as you book something and just, yeah, try to give us as close to that 2-month notice as possible, that, you know, so if there's already June or July weddings on the books, which I'm assuming they would be if knowing most things are planned that year out for when it comes to the wedding stuff, so, yeah.
Okay.
And when it comes to, I know there's gym resurfacing coming up that I know Amy and Luann were in communication about trying to figure out, you know, planning accordingly, so, I don't know, if Rick or Janelle's gonna be taking that over, just let us know and we'll modify the schedules and stuff. Okay.
Anything else, any other questions? If not, I'll look for a motion authorizing the mayor's signature on the lease agreement with Watertown Area Community Ed.
I just have one change on the lease agreement. Under number 4, the rent, second line, should be June 1st, 2017.
Oh, changing the dates for the,
It is changed on the copy from the mayor to sign.
Okay.
Your copy was a strike-out copy, I believe. I didn't give you the clean copy, the clean
Okay.
copy you saw. But just maybe double check it.
The rent part, yeah, I saw that too, and that's not
It's not
Struck
struck
out.
out.
All right, yeah, we'll make sure to make that change. If it's not, we may already do it. All right, so anything we'll have to make a motion?
I'll make that motion.
I'll second it.
Motion second, any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
thank you very much.
you.
We'll have
Thank you.
Janelle then email, if they haven't already, look at the schedule now going forward, in case we haven't captured over the summer.
Yep.
And maybe they have already, maybe they already know the dates, but if not, we'll get you caught up into that two-month window.
Yeah, 'cause I know sometimes I like to add community ed stuff on the fly
Yeah.
too,
All right,
Okay, we'll get you.
perfect. Thank you. All right. Six point two, approval of severance agreement with the city administrator. Everyone has a copy of the agreement in their packet. Are there any comments, questions on that before we move forward? If not, I have specific motions that I'll need to make, to stay compliant with the, Minnesota statutes. But if there's any questions on that? So as per the Minnesota statutes, 45.722, we do need to, in a public forum, financial terms of the contract. So that'll be one of the motions discussing that. That'll give opportunity, a 15-day window if there's any changes from the residents. Also time to give any feedback if they feel on that. So the first one is specifically the financial terms. The second motion then will be approving all other aspects of the agreement. So I'll make a motion to approve the financial terms of the proposed severance agreement for the city of Mayor to offer Luann Rouge Hammond pursuant to Minnesota Statute Section 465.722, Section 4, and pursuant to the terms and conditions of the severance agreement before the city council the conditions of the severance agreement before the city council for the city council's approval of the financial terms are as follows. Payment to the severance amount of $32,600 minus normal and customary withholdings, excluding para, for additional health coverage. The insurance plan, the city shall contribute towards Luann's contribution coverage payment the sum of $787 per month until the sooner of December 31st, 2017, or the date the employee becomes eligible to participate in another health insurance plan. If Luann's eligibility to participate in another health insurance plan terminates before December 31st, then from that date, from the date of that health insurance plan termination until December 31st, the city shall pay Luann $600 per month until December 31st, 2017, as additional contributions towards Luann's health care expenses. Long motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
All right. Any further discussion on that? Hearing none. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. And then on the second, I'll make a motion to approve the substantive terms of the severance agreement in the form that has been provided in our council packets without any additional changes as it's been presented. Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. So Luann, we'd like to thank you for your service. We appreciate everything you've done. We'd like to present you a certificate for your service. I really appreciate everything you've done for the city on behalf of the city council and all the residents. So thank you. Here's a certificate for Luann for recognition of her valuable contributions to the city of Mayor. We also have a card here for you. So this is for you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for
You're
everything.
welcome.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Then we'll move to 6.3, approval of resolution 5-8-2017-25, modifying authorized signatures at financial institutions. Rick, is there anything you need to add to this discussion?
No.
On the signatures?
No.
These are all the straightforward, these are the signatures that you've discussed that need to be switched over.
Right.
Page 2, I'm sorry. Through the contract. So do we have a motion approving resolution 5-8-2017-25, modifying signatures at financial institutions?
So moved.
Okay, do we have a second?
I'll second it.
Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. And then we'll need a motion removing the city administrators and previous city clerk from the Edward Jones accounts.
I'll make that motion.
And that's second. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. 5-8-2017-27, appointment of city administrator, clerk, treasurer. Any
I'll make that
discussion?
motion.
Any discussion, any comments? Liz, you made a motion to approving resolution 5-8-2017-26. Good, second.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you. We look forward to working with all of you during
Thank
this
you.
transition period.
Yep. Thank you, Rick, and have you had a chance to meet everyone yet? Or if not,
Yeah.
we'll make sure
I
after
have to
the,
meet
Okay.
Tracy after.
we'll make sure after the meeting, we do that. Thank you very much. And everyone saw Rick's email with his contact information on yours, if you need to get in contact with him. 6.6, approval of installation of glass at the counter. There are concerns about safety, and to reduce the amount of noise in the community center, so we have a quote to install glass, up on the counter. Two different options. Janelle, I don't know if you looked at those options on which you would prefer or not. One has a cutout hole, one is, with it looked like an area cut out of the glass, and one has it just 4 inches, I think, with a slide tray. I think there should almost just be a slide.
Yeah.
A couple things I wanna discuss on is, one, obviously the noise, I'm all for that, I get that, I think that's the safety side. We need to talk about that, I think, further in the council. I'm concerned from that aspect of it. I'm concerned from a safety standpoint that we haven't heard any issues going, if there are things we're missing, we need to be aware of those, so that part worries me some, but, this won't be safety glass by any means. It could be smashed as easy as anything, so, maybe it's a work session and then hammer this out a little more, or approve this now, but if it's strictly just noise, I think this is sufficient, some will work, but I would think more of a sliding, that could even be left open if needed.
What
but-
is the safety concern?
I was under the impression it was mostly just for noise.
Okay.
I would be worried about safety because there are times where you are here alone.
Yeah.
And if you're here alone, and I want you to feel safe at work. So,
We did have some discussion about locking the doors and starting, a procedure that way. But we really kinda just started talking about it, and I think now that with Rick here, maybe we could discuss that. I mean, the safety, I could see where we could discuss that a little further. I think the glass initially was just mostly for the noise, with the new summer hours coming in.
All right, go ahead, Rick.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I can appreciate the fact that there may be noise issues, but I was kind of surprised when I initially saw this that there really wasn't, any attempt or discussion regarding the potential safety issues and, office safety in municipal buildings has become quite an issue over the last few years, and I agree. Janelle is the only one here from time to time. It's appropriate that we take the necessary steps to make sure that we provide a safe environment. And, I guess possibly just even, within some limits, give me authority to dispense with this issue, since that we want to look into the safety aspects of this. And, obviously, if it's, more than my spending authority, which I guess is $5,000, I can't imagine it's gonna be that much. Obviously, I would have to come back to the council and ask for the case, but, yeah, I think we should look at the safety component first.
Yeah, if it's tempered glass, I'm afraid it's gonna be
Right.
If we're gonna do something, it should be at least kind of
Right.
eliminating the
I would agree, so my suggestion would be we table this for now and let
Yeah.
you two meet
Sure.
and discuss it and come with a plan and,
Firm recommendation.
and if it turns out we need to have some overall safety discussions, and I know there has been some of that
Yeah.
in the past, regarding council and some of staff, so, then we maybe hit that up in a work session
Sure.
and discuss that. But why don't we table, I'd suggest we table that and then, let you two talk and come with a plan. Do we need a motion to table that, or can we just table that, right? Can we just
I
table it?
think you as mayor can probably too.
Okay, we'll table that item then, for further discussion. 6.7, there's nothing in the packet about this.
Is it the two or three?
1515 Hidden Trail.
Yep.
So please introduce yourselves, and you both live at 1515 Hidden Trail?
No, I do, he lives to the south of me.
Okay.
We're both involved in this.
Is there any way our house could get pulled up on Google Earth just to point out a couple?
Yeah.
Who's got control?
Connected? Rick, are you
Rick.
connected?
Yes.
My name's Ryan Martini. I actually live right next door to 1515 and 1519 Hidden Trail.
My name's Dan Pohl, I live at 1515 Hidden Trail, moved there in 2010, May.
Just give us a second while we pull that up. And Dave, I think you have some information on this, correct?
I'm familiar with issues in the area. I'm not sure if I know specifically what's going on now, but, I know that the backyard's drainage.
What's the address, 1515? You just need to go to Google Maps.
I am, yes.
Right to the south of me.
I know where you're at. Are you the one that has the backyard that does this?
That's me.
Okay.
And I did go look at it as well. And mine does that as well, just not quite the same extreme.
Okay.
Yeah, it's pretty much that, like,
Mhm.
And you'll have to excuse us a little bit, we were aware of this would be on the agenda, but we have no information in our packet, so.
No, 'cause
I'm not
I
even
think
aware
I
of the
talked
issue.
to Lou Ann and she said she was gonna send me an email that I could take pictures and attach it to, and I guess I never got an email from her,
Yeah, okay,
so.
so we'll work through it, but
Okay.
I'll need to be updated on the whole concern.
Okay, do I have to use my
Yeah,
microphone,
yeah.
or can I come up here and
Yeah,
point to it?
no, go ahead.
Okay, the storm, or the catch basin is gonna be right on the north side of my property right here,
Okay,
okay? The drainage comes from the south, supposed to flow through to there. When it rains hard, it runs like a river through there.
okay.
But then where we run into problems is,
Even today, it hasn't rained since, what, Tuesday? This morning, there's still standing water in the backyard. Tonight, the standing water's gone, but you have to almost wear knee boots to go even in the backyard. It stays wet all year long. It doesn't matter how dry it is, the grass will, whatever is grass down there will stay green no matter how dry it gets when the rest of the yard is brown. But anytime it rains, it is a constant problem. My concern with it is, I'm afraid all the topsoil got pushed up to the top side of that ditch, and the bottom of that is entirely clay. And I don't know if it's not to enough of a grade that it all runs, or my question is, who okayed the dirt work? Was it the builder, was it an engineer that signed off on that to get it, since it is running into a catch basin? Who signed off on that to approve it? I guess I'm looking for a couple answers, just to why a tile line wasn't put in there. I mean, 'cause when making such a big, I bought the house knowing there's a ditch in the backyard. I didn't think it was gonna stay wet like that. I thought it's gonna be for a day or two until it dries, and we run into problems. Mosquitoes are terrible. When the city comes through and sprays it, they are instant, they're back there. We can't be out in our backyard anywhere near dark. We can't be in our backyard because it is so wet. I guess I'm just looking for a couple answers from the engineer, from the council, to see what remedies we can do, what assistance we can get from the city.
Which property you wanna do then, are you?
So we're just on the property just south of there, so it's just to the bottom of it. The way the properties are graded, the property south of me, which is the last property before there's a road, is, slightly, mostly flat and then grades at the very end towards my property. Just north of, that catch basin is similar, but not anywhere near to the same degree or extreme. They have no problems.
Zero.
So,
All dry.
whatever
You can
was,
drive a four-wheeler, even in the middle of the rain, you're not gonna tear up the grass. I can,
you know, the biggest, I think, question, obviously is, you know, what alleviation may or may not be available. Obviously, it was designed to drain, it does not. The health questions regarding mosquitoes, we certainly know that mosquitoes are Minnesota, you know, born. However, when they're that massive, my main concern with, I have 3 kids, I know you have 2 that are even younger, is just because they're so prevalent because of the water that stays, you know, the health hazards that are with that. The drain is not in the back of the property, which any development, obviously the drain should be between the properties, between you and whatever's behind you. With our particular situation, it's actually right in the middle of the yard. So it just creates a situation that obviously should not be if it were designed or graded or engineered the way it was originally intended or should have been. When they did the grading, I know for both of our properties, the part, it's mostly woods looking, but there's a lot of tree line there. And that is probably a good 12 inches plus above the field behind it. So whatever was pushed and scraped, took all the topsoil off, pushed it up on top of that, and so the water just collects there, which obviously is what it's supposed to do, but it doesn't drain.
I guess,
Yeah, and it's been a while, but it might, I don't remember, it might have been last summer, I think that was culvert taking a look at it.
I had requested last year, a look at it, just again to see what options and alleviations there were. I know I just recently requested, and Kyle took a look out there as well, and the fill isn't even, anywhere near as much of a concern. It's just the fact that, because you fill and it's not gonna do anything, it's just gonna back up whatever the water's not going there now. If there is no, drainage available, it's just gonna continue to sit there, and again, you know.
Why were these houses built?
2005.
5 and 6.
Dave, do you have anything?
Well, I can give you a limited background on kind of how this came together based on the plans. So this was right before we became engineers, so this is, I don't have firsthand knowledge of kind of how this came together. The way it was originally designed, as you had mentioned, would have been to have that catch basin back on the back property line, or the west property line between the development and the property to the west. My guess is that required cooperation and some sort of an easement from the property to the west, which I would guess, based on the way it was finally put together, that cooperation wasn't there. For whatever reason, it was decided that, I don't know if those trees were there, or for whatever reason, it was moved off the property line to the east, and you have that good shape to those backyards. The design then, and I believe this was, you both have walkouts?
No, I do not.
He has a lookout, I have a walkout, but I have a split, so
Okay.
it's a.
Yeah, so
From that
you-
perspective.
to get the lookout, or whatever house they were trying to design there, so you have that cutaway in the backyard. You have the drain that was put in there, and then everything was supposed to have a grade that drained in that low spot.
So the original plan was to have the catch basin on the back corner of the
Would have
property.
been the back corner of the lot for whatever reason, it was moved off the property line. My guess is, again, that they didn't have permission from the adjoining property owner to do that work right on the property line, so they had to move it off
And
to
cut our
stay on,
property
to
in
stay
that
on their
corner.
property.
Well, and
Essentially, yes.
the drainage is lower than the grade of the walkout as well.
Yeah,
So
sure.
from both of our properties, it's not flat with a
Right.
little bit of a basin, it's a fairly significant drop, even beyond where that walkout was originally created. So,
And even beyond where my lookout would be.
right, that's what, yeah,
Yeah.
oh yeah, 'cause we're about the same height.
So typically, at a minimum, the way it was designed would be to have a 2% slope across that turf to make sure that it doesn't hold water. Now, generally speaking, this is all clay, so if you have minimal topsoil, it kind of takes the water. What I can recall from having looked at it, and I haven't looked at it recently, but it appears that just the way those lots were graded, it's flatter than it was originally supposed to be. And I wanna say that it's probably your property, I don't know which order these homes are constructed in, but your property that kind of sets the elevation for the other two, the way it was set. Long story short, it doesn't appear that they have the grade that would have originally been designed to have. When, from a process standpoint, when the development comes in, it starts with the developer, similar to what we're doing out in Hidden Creek right now, where it's kind of a mass grading project. And everything is shaped, the drains are put in, the land as a whole is graded so that everything works the way it's supposed to and the way it's designed. Then what happens is the individual homes start coming in and building, and what we've seen in the past is the home builders don't pay attention to that overall grading plan. They take care of the lot they're working on, and we start losing these longer runs of drainage that we're supposed to have. Which is why now, because of things like this, we try to go out during the building process and before things are finished and help
Are we holding the builders accountable for that grade at the end?
We have an escrow that we hold until everything is the way it's supposed to be.
So you're going and checking for future homes to make sure that everything you designed at the beginning is still gonna work?
Well, that the overall grading plan, the drainage plan is
Still being met.
carried forward, or if it's changed, making the necessary adjustments to.
So the city didn't double check, sorry.
So, yeah, so, again, before my time, but I believe when this was happening, it was probably issued a building permit, and the builder was on his own to construct the lot and make sure the drainage worked.
And the city did not double check to make sure that it was,
I can't speak to that,
Okay.
but that's what that is the process now. I don't know that was
that's why
in
you
place
guys
then.
inspect them now afterwards.
Yeah, because we do, we have
We're in
issues.
the same boat as you, it happens.
I was gonna say,
Right.
behind Evergreen Place
Yeah,
there,
and
we had one
We were told
similar to
that
that.
if all the neighbors wanna get together and put some drain tile in, we're more than be able to do that at our own cost. So I feel your pain, believe me.
Yeah, 'cause it's not a new thing by any stretch of the
No,
imagination.
no.
It's been in every
It's more
year.
so that I got 2 young kids now that cannot go in our backyard.
I know,
Now what I trying to, again, so part of this is the city's discretion as to what investment do you wanna make in addressing issues like this, and that could be several different things. One is letting Kyle and I go out and spend time on it just to try to evaluate the situation, see if we can come up with some ideas that would make it better. Then if we go to that step, then it's a question of, okay, whose responsibility is it? Is this a homeowner responsibility to get together and take care of it, or does the city feel like there's some obligation? I can tell you that this is not a unique problem. The way things have been graded in these developments, so we end up with some flat grades, and it doesn't take a whole lot to make the drainage difficult,
Didn't
and
we
this
just
is
have
one of
this
those spots.
a couple months ago?
Apple Circle, we
Yeah.
talked about one, I think,
And they
either
had to
last
do their
fall or
own,
this
right?
winter.
But we coordinated it, right? Because they were tying into,
Right, yeah, we had to do it as a city project because it was in our easement. We had to
oh,
keep it
that's
back
right.
there. So,
Right, and to solve the issue, they had to leave their property, go across neighbor's property, which again, we still had a public easement, but they didn't have access to the easement, we had access to that easement. In this case, there should be an easement over the pipe that goes from the catch basin out to, is it Hidden Creek Boulevard? Is that-
Trail.
Hidden Creek, yeah, to the north. I'd have to look, I don't know if that drainage way in the backyard is protected by an easement, but I'm guessing it is. So, long story short, there should be public easement to be able to do what needs to be done. The question I'd have is whether or not, it's possible to lower that casting at all so that some grading can be done to try to get the water to drain better, or if it's just strictly putting in some drain tile with some area inlets to help, one draw water out of the ground and catch what you can on the surface.
Or even appropriately put in tile doesn't even need inlets, I mean, just as long as you have clear rock.
If it can draw the water out of the ground, yeah.
I guess my concern, I mean, if it wasn't inspected to make sure that it was done right, where does the fault lie?
Yeah, and we don't know that it wasn't inspected right. At the time in '05, everything might have been done as it was supposed to at '05. We'll have to do some research into that.
Yeah, and again, I would guess that it was a building permit and, you know, I guess my view is at the point where that lot is sold, the city's got their obligation to make sure that the plan is functional. Now, there's a responsibility to the person building on that lot to make sure that it works, and that the drainage is appropriate from that standpoint.
Unless that prior to that builder coming in. So I would be fine with having Kyle and Dave get together, go out there, take a look at it, try to get a plan, try to get a couple ideas of what can be done. You know, based on that, then we have to look at who's responsible for what. I mean, that may be the second stage of things, but I'm fine with taking some time, going out there, looking at it, and kind of alleviate the help on this and work through it.
What kind of timeframe would you be looking at for that?
I could come out next week.
If I could just get a notice or a phone call, and you guys are coming over. Meet with you, I can give it to you.
Okay.
Yeah, so, yeah, if you have just contact information, if you leave with us, then yeah, we'll give you a call and, set something up. We gotta come out some evening and take a look at it after work or whatever.
Okay.
I can do that, I won't speak for Kyle. So,
As we know, that
see what
way,
we come up with.
there's not a question why people are walking into that yard, if, you know, one of us aren't there.
Right.
Right.
My family's home during the day, that's why,
Yep.
so.
Yep.
They'll get a hold of you and
For sure.
arrange something.
Alright, and then are we planning to meet here again?
We'll probably discuss this at probably a work session, I'm guessing. Once you get some ideas, we'll come back in. We'll have Rick, once we get it on our agenda for the work session, we'll make sure to get you an agenda, so you can certainly come to, so you know what's going on. We'll certainly keep you in the loop.
Right, I just don't want it to get pushed out to August, so I
No, I
can
think
halfway enjoy my backyard.
If we can look at it next week, we can at least come up with kind of what we think the options are to give you some relief there, and then it's a question of how, if those are reasonable options, well, what's the execution?
I think the intent would be to move as fast as possible, you know.
Let's shoot for that.
City, or, you know.
And just, again, you know, past issues like the similar issues, I think we've done what we're talking about here. We've gone out, taken a look at it, provided some resources to try to help come up with some solutions, but then turned it back to the property owners to, that's the way it's been done in the past, not saying that that's.
Cause if it came back that we could run a tile line into that catch basin, I'd prefer, you know, just because it's your guys' catch basin, to have your guys cut the hole in the thing. I mean, I'd gladly do it, but later on down the line, if somebody said, oh, you cut that hole wrong, I don't want that coming back on me. I'd rather have it fall on your shoulders.
I think we have.
I think there's some coordination there at a minute.
We need to make sure, who's doing what on some of that stuff.
Right.
That's why we like to stay involved and try to work with the homeowners on it.
I figure that was better than just going to cut it myself.
I appreciate that. No, it is.
So,
I
alright.
appreciate it. Okay,
Thank
we'll be in touch.
Thank you.
Yep. Rick, we'll be in touch. Thanks for coming in.
Kyle, you have my contact, so.
Yeah, I got your cell.
All right, then we'll move to 6.8, fencing and easements. Sounds like we have 3 permits, and Rick, I don't know how much you have.
Yeah, I looked at them today, a couple of them are just in the very early stages, and, it always becomes a challenge, 'cause if I remember what Luann said, I think your ordinance does specify that fences can be in the easement area, but it always gets complicated when you've got underground utilities or underground electric, so, I guess the current practice is they are kind of reviewed on a case-by-case basis and authority granted when appropriate. So I don't know to what extent, other than just some general discussion tonight, direction, I don't know if the practice of policy of the past has worked well for everybody, and if there's any need to change it, or...
As many problems, I think.
Well, I can give you a little
Yeah.
insight, and I'm sure Kyle probably can chime in too. So the practice has been, I get a call and that we get a fence permit, and usually I think if it's the standard 5-foot easements, you take a look at it, and the permit probably gets issued without a whole lot of further review or discussion. Where we run into issues is where when staff recognizes that there's a 10-foot easement on the lot line, that's an indication that there's some infrastructure there. So there's a pipe running down a lot line. In this case, you have storm sewer running through the backyard. So the question gets to be then is, okay, now you have a piece of infrastructure in there that at some point needs to be maintained, potentially at some point in the future needs to be removed or replaced, or whatever the case would be. So it gets difficult then from a staff standpoint to say, well, it's all right, just put a fence right over the top of our pipe, but at the same time recognizing that these property owners, if we start telling them you have to stay out of the easement completely, that's a fairly significant piece of ground that they're not having access to, and if you have a dog or for kids or whatever reason you're trying to fence in your yard, you really limit the space by doing that. When we talked about this before, I think we had some in Coldwater Crossing, one in particular that we were looking at, and we wrestled with this as to, I think where we ended up in our discussions, and it was probably at a work session, was, well, we probably let people encroach into those easements, but at a minimum, we probably have to have Public Works take a look at it to determine what is needed just to be able to access structures and maintenance of pipes, those sorts of things.
Right.
And I'll let Kyle speak to that.
Yeah, right now, like, we have, we got stormwater ponds.
One is in that cul-de-sac right on the right of that screen. Yep. So right there, that property line there.
We have a pipe that goes right here, and here's our stormwater pond. And right now, I'm wrestling with the idea of having one dredged out. So it's not getting equipment to the stormwater pond and everything kind of the issue. I mean, they'll have trees, they'll have sprinkler heads, they have everything in our easement. And when they come and they put a fence, even if they put it 10 feet off the line or the easement, whatever, I mean, getting an excavator through there, it's hard, it's very hard. But, I mean, right now we don't have issues with the pipe, but, 50 years from now we can have issues with the pipe, and they'll have the fence, and the property owner probably won't be there anymore.
Yep.
And so we just need to.
And I think they do have to sign something that basically acknowledges that they're putting that fence there at their own risk, and
I don't think
that's
they made any of the other ones sign anything. We need to.
I
Right.
thought that was,
I don't
it was
know.
on the deed or something, it went on there.
Does it go on the deed?
So what brought this up? What brought this?
well, right now there's 3 fence permits
Because we have 3 of them.
waiting to be issued, and it,
I wasn't sure if there was other issues with that, and it seems our code allows it, seems we've been doing it, I wasn't sure
right.
exactly what.
And it's probably more of the long, there's a short-term issue as far as if there's maintenance that needs to be done on a structure, and then the long-term issue of, we're probably a ways out before we're going in and digging up this pipe and never having to replace it, but it doesn't, to make sure that we have that life, part of it is properly maintaining it, and that gets to be the trick with some of this too. In a case like that, you have access to the catch basin at the street, but how do you get to that outlet at the pond if we close off that easement? Because that is not just an easement to protect the pipe, it's also would be Kyle's access to get back to the pond.
This isn't unique to Marion, this issue is unique to every community.
Every community that has storm sewer like this, yep. Yep.
So how is like a homeowner, like when you're buying a home, are you told, I don't remember when I bought my home 12 years ago, well, you've got easements on either side and,
I think it's always, as a homeowner, you
You-
just
you
always
should-
assume
you should-
that there's
Right.
easement.
It's in your deed and stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I will say that there's a good share of people that don't, that's
Well,
the
they
last
don't
thing on their mind to look,
Right, they don't
look for
understand.
that sort of thing.
I didn't know about these things until I,
Realtors aren't
Started really-
necessarily helping the process, you know, in,
well, who wants to say, well,
you
you
know.
buy this house, it has a fence on it, but just so you know,
Yeah.
that if the city ever needs to ask for something back here, you're responsible to take that fence down and put it back up.
Yeah, again, so it's this balance between being reasonable and giving ourselves a chance to take care of what we're supposed to take care of.
I think if we have that acknowledgement, what they're doing from the current owner, I don't know what more is our responsibility past that.
Because we keep that on file in the records anyway.
I agree, I mean, if they go into it fully knowing that they're gonna have to rip this stuff out at their own expense, and if it needs to be an emergency thing where we need it done now, you're gonna get it done now, then you do it. I perfectly understand where you guys are coming from, saying, this is a lot of work, and it's a hard ask, but I think, if the property owner's right, and if they take that risk and put it up, I'm okay with them doing that.
I think it's at least reasonable for Kyle to look at these things too and try to think through maintenance from an immediate need too, is that as minimum, take a look at the condition of that stuff before that
right.
fence goes up, if that's what we're gonna allow.
erodes away in a month. And you do your due diligence and say, hey, this is why a bad idea, and then if I decide that I think it's okay, and I think it's okay, it's okay. You've looked out for the best interest of the city, and
Yeah,
what you need to do.
usually I always catch these things too, 'cause I'll get locates and stuff, what they call on the locate, and okay, there's a pipe here. So, how far off are we right now, 10 feet off the?
I believe where we have the pipe run down the property line, we should have 10 feet on either side, so we should have a 20-foot
20-foot
corridor,
span.
where the standard would be a 10.
Right.
So 5 on each side.
Right.
No, just, on one hand, I can guarantee that subsequent property owners will probably not discover this until it's after the fact. You gotta deal with that. You do have to protect your access to the infrastructure and make sure you can get people there. Dave, I don't know if you've ever heard this, but I've heard before that, attorneys explain, unless there's financial consideration on the easement, it's somewhat of a taking, and so you really can't prohibit certain things going on in there. I mean, obviously, we have an easement to do that, but you really can't stop people from doing things in there, but they do so at their own risk, so I don't know if that's one in city attorneys.
Well, and I've heard some, I mean, it's still the underlying property is still under their ownership.
Yeah.
And we have certain rights over it, and our rights are to have that infrastructure in that location and the right to maintain it.
Right.
And if they do something over the top of it, I think you're right, that push comes to shove, can we stop them? Maybe not, but then they're also kind of doing it at risk to having to
Then they come back.
work with us in the future.
Why did you stop us?
Yeah,
So.
To me, a little I know of this particular issue is the value of the easement area, so, I can appreciate where staff is coming from. Because, for generations to come, somebody will be cursed for taking away the access. This one is a little uncomfortable. There's other uses in the world.
Can't use it, so I keep the kids or the dog in that area, and now it's not really usable 10 feet. I'm fine keeping it as is, if we allow them to do it, I think we need a good documentation. I wouldn't mind, even if it was something that our code was written, that you can't put anything in the easement unless you come in, sign, acknowledge this, and maybe it's even more in there, and you take responsibility to, if you sell the property, to inform that property owner of it, and kind of just make it as much we can that, hey, this is not our
Well, I think the
deal.
most serious element is probably fencing. I mean, I can't think of too much beyond that other than building a garage or something or an outbuilding, but, I think, through your fencing permit, I saw some documents today where it's pretty well stated in there. And then I think the thing is, make sure you record it anytime they're in the easement, and that should hopefully protect the city under any circumstances. But yeah, explain to a property owner they can't use 10 feet of their property, that doesn't go over too well.
I put up a fence and I,
Do you have to take it down?
no, the public works, yeah, it's in the public works, corner lot.
I think the only thing we, you know, so if we're, maybe we don't need the 10 feet, but I don't know that we want fence posts right on top of it.
Oh, yeah,
So there has to be
absolutely
some
not,
sort of an
yeah,
offset to that, so some of that stuff gets pretty shallow, we don't want a fence post driven through
So
the top
what
of
would
the
you
pipe.
gentlemen like to see to after,
Well, I guess, I think when we talked about before, it should be at least as wide as a Bobcat.
Yeah, exactly, yeah, Bobcat or, 20 feet.
So if you've got 10 foot on both sides of the property line, 5 foot intrusion, if you left 10 feet between the two.
Routine, you're right, yep,
And anything beyond that, then that's when you have to approach the property owner,
Yep.
tell them they got stuff in your way.
yep.
Yeah, does that make
Yeah,
again,
it seems reasonable to
it's
me.
it's a tough deal,
I think that makes sense, and see what happens going forward, but.
We'll discuss it at the staff level and make sure the appropriate paperwork is in place.
Good, okay.
And then-
Take a look at that, I'm curious to what the wording is and
Yep.
how clear it is that, if we need to, it may have to get taken down.
I think it's
pretty clear.
It's pretty
I'm
clear.
hoping it is, I gotta imagine
I'm
it
looking
is.
at it now, it's pretty clear.
yeah.
Good.
And for whatever it's worth, when we've had discussions, particularly with Coldwater Crossing now going forward with, that's a pretty, big chunk of development yet to happen there. We've kind of put them on notice that, we're gonna be much more, we're gonna look at this backyard drainage situation a lot closer than we have in the past, just because it just causes too many issues. You know, if we can grade the backyards, get them to drain. Now, what that means is, that's when you start losing some of your walkouts, or, you know, you have some full basements instead of, you know, lookouts, things like that. That's where that kind of engineering the land to accommodate the type of house versus letting the house, fit the land you have to work with. It's just been an ongoing issue, and I don't think we've really even, completely got into the issues we're gonna have once you start, getting to the day you gotta go in and try to do something with those ponds, so.
And some of the buildings are gone, and then they're looking to the city as if our, something we.
Yeah, and, you know, we have discussions like we had earlier where, you know, well, whose responsibility is it now? Why did the city allow that? Well, that's easier said than done. I mean, again, it's just trying to find this appropriate balance.
You guys just look at those on that staff level and, cover it, okay, perfect. Anything more on that? All right. Any information, any packet, anyone has anything to discuss on? Then we'll go to council reports. Eric, any council reports?
Yes, sir.
Bryce?
We had an EDA meeting,
Okay.
and right now we're only meeting quarterly, so it's kind of moving at a snail's pace, and we wanna kinda do some, advertising for local businesses. We've talked about doing, you know, spotlighting, a business, once a month. We have about, I can't remember, it would take about 2 years to get, if we did once a month. But we'd first reach out to any businesses to see if they'd be interested. I think there's some of their information is in the welcome packet that we give to the residents. And then we did talk about possibly meeting more frequently, just on things when there's, something that needs to be voted on that we were waiting for additional things to be done instead of waiting. So right now we don't meet till August, so is there something that could happen in the interim? We'll probably wait till we get our actual city administrator before, but, you know, we talked about doing this spotlight of a employee or business of the month at the last year and a half, and when you only meet quarterly, it's really hard to approve something and then get things, change it, so,
I think the EDA's bylaws say that they meet quarterly or as needed,
yes.
so you could call a meeting.
Yeah, so that's what we talked about, was to call a meeting if there was something, an action step
Yep.
that would need to happen the next month,
Mhm.
that we would just call a special meeting for that, so that we can, keep things moving forward. But if there's nothing going on, then of course we would just go as our schedule needed.
That's good, good, okay. Lynn's update on the park board?
Nothing new on the park board, we have a meeting tomorrow night.
Be curious to see how that goes with the 5K.
Yes.
Wish I could be there, but I cannot.
I was stuck at my lawyer's office during the last planning commission meeting. Was there anything out, an update on Casey's at all, or what's going on with that? Oh,
Alright, and I have no
Applied for a liquor
reports
license,
also,
applied for a
busy.
3-2 license, I read that in the
anything else, and again, I didn't get a great opportunity to introduce Rick, as the new, interim city administrator. Everyone's familiar now, he's introduced himself, Tyson, you can have a chance to talk to him, so thank you, welcome.
Yes.
As our residents get to know you and
Looking forward to it,
Yeah.
and, albeit I won't be here every day of the week, by all means, get a hold of me if there's any issues. Accessibility is very important, and I think I mentioned this with Mike, based on my previous experience as an interim. My primary task is to bring calm to the situation and try to keep things moving forward in an orderly fashion, and, I guess I consider myself to be someone who wants to get things done, so, I don't intend to just sit in my office as an interim. If there's some things we need to work on, I'll surely attempt to do what I can to get them done for you while I'm here, and, but yeah, I do, even as an interim, I think it's important that I get out in the community and meet people and so forth, and, I think that pays dividends for everybody as time goes on. But again, stop
forward
in
to
at
it.
any time and we can visit about things, and, I think I've been going to council meetings for about, it's been a long time. And actually, I have a tendency to talk too much, so with that, I'm just gonna conclude my comments, and you'll hear more from me in future meetings, and you'll probably get tired of my input, but I won't hesitate to tell you what I think and what I think you should do. It doesn't mean you have to do what I tell you.
Mhm.
what we're looking for. Perfect, well, thank you
Yep.
and welcome. Alright, any other items? I'll look for motion to adjourn. Do we have a second? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We are adjourned.